Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to James Cameron.
I almost bailed on being a filmmaker. It's about sitting in that big dark room with all those other people you don't know, and something's gonna come up on that screen that's gonna take you somewhere. I'm the king of the world!
We have a very special treat tonight. We are going to be watching James Cameron's Deep Sea Challenge 3D, although we're not watching it in 3D, but it was released theatrically in 3D. Maybe you're watching it in 3D on a nice 3D television, but either way, I'm very excited to be doing this. This is a audio commentary for a film documentary that did not get an audio commentary initially, which is partly why I came up with the idea to do this. And then, of course, having had Mr. John Bruno, the co-director of Deep Sea Challenge, on the podcast previously, it all started kind of forming in my head. And I was like, maybe I should just reach out to John, see if he's kind of even interested in doing this. And here we are. A few weeks later, we've nailed down our schedules, and we're recording a Deep Sea Challenge audio commentary. So get your copy of Deep Sea Challenge, DVD, Blu-ray. Unfortunately, it's not streaming anywhere, so you do have to own the film, which, I mean, you should own this film. Pop it in the player, sync it up to 000. It's a black screen. If you were to press play, I believe Disruptive LA is the first logo you're going to see. So that's where we are. We're at the very beginning of the film, black screen, and we're going to get going here. But first, we got to bring him in, Mr. John Bruno.
Hi, thank you.
Of course.
This is pretty strange for me, but yeah, we never did the commentary, but this was quite an exciting time. There's a very long backstory of, well, not that long, but there's a backstory to how I became involved. I mean, I knew about this. Jim had been, everything we've been doing over the years, Jim had been building the sub in Australia with Ray Quint. And Andrew White was initially assigned as producer-director, and with Jim, the expedition leader. And this was kind of underway, and I'd hear about it from time to time when we were working on things, Jim and I. I heard about it when we were doing Avatar, because it was being constructed in Australia, in Melbourne, however you say it. And so at one point, he said that after like 7 years, off and on, that they were about to test the sub. And because I emailed him about it, and I said, well, hey, is there a spot for me? Can I come out? He goes, well, it's kind of it's kind of booked up, but you got to ask, I'd have to ask Andrew about it. And because they were kind of full up on this one ship that they had with the crew, the sub crew that was on it. And so I talked to Charlie Arneson. Charlie Arneson at that time was working with Jim. He was on our Titanic expeditions. So Andrew was involved with Titanic. Or Deep Sea Challenge, one of those. I'm getting them blurred, because I had done a couple of deep sea expeditions with Jim on the side when he would do them, and so I had some experience. I ended up being a segment producer on Deep Sea Challenge when it was the second dive. The Titanic dive was one we went on to see, basically try to film the Titanic for the movie Titanic. And I'm in the opening sequence. I'm in a sub that's going across the hull of the bow of the Titanic. That's my shot in the movie, but I'm in the sub with one of the DPs. And then on the second expedition was Deep Sea Challenge. No, excuse me. Second was Ghost of the Abyss. Mm-hmm. Ghost of the Abyss was a documentary, and I was with Bill Paxton in the sub in Mir 2, and that's I think that's used. That'll be, you'll see that in this film. They run clips of making of Titanic and then Jim's dive on the Bismarck. Use some of those clips to show his experience in the past. We kind of interspersed it throughout a nice section of the film that shows that. Bill Wisher was in the sub on that dive. He got to go to Bismarck. Bill Wisher's both of our longtime friends, writer. He co-wrote Terminator 2. But on this, I actually bought a ticket. I worked it out, and then I had talked to Andrew and said, is there room for me? I got a ticket. I'm going to join Charlie Arneson, and Charlie Arneson wanted me to go with him to Papua New Guinea and find the Binding people. He was going to do a series of when everything was down. The sub, you dive the sub, you got repairs, whatever you do. While it's in the repair state, he wanted to shoot, basically a travel log of it. And so I was going to go with Charlie, who was going to set up some of these destinations. And one was the Binding people, Binding tribe. There are two tribes around Rabaul on Papua New Guinea that we were going to film. I got permission to film a fire dance, and this was going to be done in 3D. And so I finally, that was my initial goal. I was set to do that, travel around with Charlie and set up all these, different sort of down day travel log areas, kind of locate them. So, and then I contacted Andrew, and Andrew said, well, if you come here, you can come here. But you're going to be on the second boat. But if you do come here, I'm going to put you to work, like we're on a regular dive. So you're not going to get paid, but I'll put you to work. And I went, okay, no problem. I'll take stills. I'll do whatever you want me to do. But I did want to be. This would be a third, what we'd call the third expedition that I'd been on, deep sea expedition. And they're all minimum of 50 days at sea on a boat. So there's things you have to get used to when you're on a boat like that. And people forget. I mean, you got to pay extreme attention to your environment at sea, because you're on a steel ship on a steel deck that's rolling. You've got cables crisscrossing everywhere. In this particular case, if you're lifting the sub, depending on the launch mechanism, the Russian ships had, the Keldysh had a dedicated launch system, which was a crane that lifted the boat up, swung it across the side of the ship and lowered it in the water, and it collected it the same way. This, I didn't know quite what it was going to be, but it was designed. They made it work. It was a jury-rigged thing where there was a crane on board this ship that would lift it, swing it over the side of the ship, lower it in the water, and then divers. There's a lot of divers that were involved because of the way it was a bizarre ship, bizarre sub, as you'll see. It ran horizontal like this. Jim would load in, and then when it got in the water, there was these ballast airbags that were taken off by the divers, and the thing would go vertical, and Jim was down now in the bottom, and this thing would drop, and I think we called it a vertical torpedo. But and as soon as that ballast was cut away or taken off, the thing would go, and that was that. And when it came back, they had to be replaced so the thing could float again, get back to its horizontal position to be lifted back on deck. This I know now. I knew nothing about then, but I was reading. I was given the breakdown of what was going to happen. It was in the mail. So when I got there, I was either going to watch or help. So anyway, I was not the director. I was merely a tourist, a working tourist that I was like, I was going to document it. They already had a still photographer from Nat Geo, but they had a number of on-deck 3D cameras. So I had worked with, and these were, from Vince Pace. These were the Avatar cameras, and there was one sort of shoulder-mounted second unit camera that was there. So up until that point, that's all I was going to do. 3 days before my flight to start my trip I was going to hook up with them in Sydney, Australia. I get this call from Vince Pace, and it said, it was really just a terrible call. It said, Mike, it said, Mike and Andrew are dead. Like, Mike Cameron, what are you talking about? And it's like they got in the helicopter to go film the boat leaving Sydney Harbor, and it crashed. So because it's awful. I said, well, okay, I guess it's off then. I guess it's not going to happen. And so I hung up. I assumed that's it. It's done. So I said, well, I'll find out. You guys get back to whatever you're doing. Okay, I know I'm not going, I guess. So I'll cancel my stuff. So another day went by. 2 a.m, I get a call again, 2 or 3 a.m, from Jim Cameron saying, we're going. We're not going to cancel. So, but we've been talking amongst ourselves. You have experience you've been on deep sea expeditions. You know how it works to work on a working ship like this. You've been on dive expeditions. Do you want to direct this? What? Sure. I'm already packed. That was the other thing. I didn't unpack yet. I was packed to go for 2 months, and so I hear Jim say to National Geographic people over there, Lisa Truitt, that he said yes. So he goes, okay, we'll call you at the end of the week. I'll meet, and we'll get ready to go. So that's how this started. I was given there was a script. They were going to follow this. There was a plan for all this, and they were basically going to move out to different parts of from Sydney Harbor to places around Sydney to test the sub diving. Some of that was already shot, but what they were going to do was head to, I think it was Jackanow Bay. They were going to head out and do different dives at different depths, and eventually they'd done all that practicing and rehearsal, and it's quite good in the movie where you see how they had to learn the sub and they had to learn to dive it, and they had, the crew to get in sync on how to everybody has to take their position. You do not walk on the deck. There's cables every which way that are lifting the sub and putting in the water. They all had to learn their routine and learn their job. And they learned it. They learned it on the fly. They learned it while underway, and they did dives at 1,000 feet, 3,000 feet, 5,000 feet, and then a big dive at 27,000 feet. That, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but that they would start from in and around Papua New Guinea. So they had to sail from Sydney Harbor to Papua New Guinea. So my involvement from that point was I went in Santa Barbara. We went to Mike DeGree's, the cinematographer, Mike DeGree's funeral. And a lot of people there. Then from Mike DeGree was a great guy, very well known. Although I never got to meet him. But from Santa Barbara, then I flew with Jim and his wife Susie. We flew to Melbourne for Mike's funeral, and from that point on, I said Jim said you're gonna have to meet the crew. The crew is very good friends with Mike. They don't know you. On the flight, I read all the details of the script and what was planned, the latest, and said, when you get there, you're gonna have to make yourself available to the crew. And it's, we finally all agreed that we're going to continue on this, and they just know you as someone we've worked together before, but you're going to have to make yourself available to them. And Jules O'Loughlin was an Australian cinematographer that worked with with Jim before, and worked with Andrew before on a film, and had done a lot of good stuff in Australian films. And all the crew, even there was John Garvin, who was in charge of safety, sub-safety, and maintenance for Jim, was Andrew's brother-in-law. So all these people were going through a lot of different stuff, and I had to walk in and said, "Hey, I'm here. Let's get this done." And I didn't quite. It was I was walking on eggshells. But Jules became my new best friend. Like, we're going to get this done. We're going to go forward. Andrew would have insisted to continue on with this expedition. So would Mike DeGree. And we basically met in Darwin, which is North Australia. First time I met everybody was in Darwin, and we just discussed what kind of plan, what are we going to do? And I knew how to shoot. I said, once we get on the boat, I'm going to pick all these positions, and once we're in a position, you can't move the camera during a launch, or you can move once it's launched to a recovery position. But we had a number of dives to do, and we would piece all this together later in editing. If we got good shots, we'd tie them all together. So that was the start of this. And I guess we just run the movie because I forget how long it took. Once I filmed 1,200 hours in 3D, and Jane Moran, the editor, was in Melbourne. Once we finished, and Brett Popwell, the producer, was in Melbourne. They had an office next to Allura, which is an animation company, who was supposed to do a lot of simple things for, I had storyboarded. Once it was underway, I would storyboard some things. And, to show how volcanoes worked and how things were, how the sub would work. We did these little graphic things, explaining how it worked, and then explaining Don. And then I heard that Don Walsh was going to be there. And Don had been on the original Submariner who dove in Trieste with Jacques Picard. And they were going to do the 3D version of that, showing their dive. So what was they doing at the time? They were doing TED. They had a sequences. They did some of the work in TED. It was pretty fun.
Mark Wahlberg.
Yeah. So that was the period. So anyway, off we went, and once we got aboard ship, they were testing how we're going to do this, where we're going to film it, how we're going to film it. So I guess hopefully watch this movie. What you're going to see is how this was divided. Andrew and I think, let's see, get everybody's name right here. Let's see, this opening scene, it was basically shot. It's the history of, Jim talks about him wanting to be a submariner when he was a kid. Well, it was scripted, but when we were at sea, he wasn't sure if he wanted to do it. And he goes, it would be my decision whether to do or not. And I did talk him into it, because I thought, you got to explain something a little bit. You got to explain your back history. Because there's somebody, I think I'll say this now, because when we were talking to, when Jim was doing the dives, and he had done it, I'm jumping ahead here, but he does do a 28,000 foot depth, a dive to the bottom of one of these trenches. That as a solo dive, no one had ever done that. And on the internet, because we have satellite reception, satellite internet and telephone, there was a lot of people talking about, oh, he's just one of these rich a-holes that's just doing a stunt. And that kind of really rubbed me the wrong way. So I went to Jim, and I went to a lot of people who were working on this dive. Walt Conti, for one, who worked on the Abyss. I said, I'm going to change the way I interview. I think my interview questions, I had a whole list of things I was trying to do. I'm going to ask you about Jim's obsession with diving. This goes back to for me, the Abyss. And do you have a story about that? And he goes, oh yeah, where's this and this and this. So I wanted to establish that he had a long history of interest in the sea and diving, and especially deep diving, where the Abyss came from. And that's where, oh geez. Let's see, one of the persons, Joe McInnes, who was an expedition journalist. Joe McInnes was with us. He was 80 years old, Joe. He was great guy. when Jim was in high school, he sought out Joe McGinnis, who was a guy that was truly interested in deep sea living in underwater spheres. Joe McGinnis was really the guy that was involved in that, and then Jim knew him well in high school. So we started talking about all this stuff. We started directing the questions about Jim and to other people who were talking about it, who were interested. That Jim was constantly interested before filmmaking in this. So, because he mentions in the story, am I a filmmaker or I'm an explorer? What am I? I don't know yet. He actually says that. He says that in the movie. So that started that, and then that's where the sequence came in. But it was done after I had left. I had to go back after 6 months, and that was Ray Quint was quite a well-known Australian director, and was brought in by Brett Popwell, and he could. This was in post. He did the post on this. He did the sequences with young Jim. The sequences of the Trieste with actors, reenacting, and then all the post with anything that would have visual effects in it. He finished that in Australia, and then I came back to the States, and we'd go through the final cut. We had a 4-hour movie at one point, and then there was a final cut where it had to be brought down. I like me personally, I like the 2-hour version, but it had to be for timing and release prints, trimmed down to an hour and a half. So I don't know if I got a good intro here. You understand what's about to happen?
Yeah, I think we should have had the movie going. So,
well, I don't know where it's all broken up. I can redo it.
All right.
But
so
in case I get it in the wrong place.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. So this is what we'll do. We'll, for everybody watching, listening to this, like I said, make sure you're at a black screen. It's literally at the very beginning. If you were to press play from the main menu, this is how it starts. We're paused right there, John and I. I'm going to count down from 3, 2, 1, and on play, John and I will press play, as well as you, and we're all going to be watching Deep Sea Challenge together. And John will offer up more insight, and I might drop a nugget or two here, but it's really John. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, and sounds off, right?
I hope so.
All right, we don't want to get a copyright on this. All right, so here we go. We're going to count down from 3. On play, we press play. 3, 2, 1, play. All right, so now tell me what you see.
I see stars going by in the
Disruptive?
in the Lions. No, I see Lionsgate.
Okay. Let's see here. Make sure we're going to get synced up at the same point here. Now what do you see?
A bunch of swirly stuff that's the Earth.
All right. I just saw National Geographic
Entertainment.
All right. And now it says James Cameron, National Geographic.
I don't know. I see. Yes, James Cameron. Yeah, I'm a few seconds off, but.
All right. Nope, we're good. We're good. So when you look at this, what does it bring back? I know you were talking about everything at the beginning there, but just this opening sequence of clearly Earth, and we're going into Earth.
Right.
What does this bring back for you? Was this something you were involved in, or was this something that was out of your control?
No. So this would be post,
okay.
Right? Film Associates, right? Expedition Film, and Jim doing narration, which he's quite good at that, by the way. The one thing that impressed me about all this is Jim's quite a good actor. And we're seeing him in the sub
Yep, there he
now.
is.
But and people ask me when you see him in the sub and he's talking, was he in the mock-up sub just doing dialogue? From scripted dialogue, and the answer is no. But here we are, Jim as a young boy. This was shot in Melbourne by Rick Wint. It was quite well done, I have to say. I was very pleased with it.
Where is this kid now? I want to know where's this kid now?
That little kid lives in Melbourne. He was a local actor.
Wow.
We had a number of things to select. Some actors. He looked just like Jim. I got pictures from his mom. Sent a bunch of pictures to us at first, and he's wearing the same shirt, pants, shoes. Although this was shot in Melbourne, in a little side bay in Melbourne. That's what Jim. I have a photograph of this kid. He looked just like Jim, and this is true. He did put a mouse in a bottle, and he did stuff like this.
Do you know what, was Jim present on, when that was being filmed? Was he around? No. That would have been cool.
Well, he said he was a little bit embarrassed by it, and so he couldn't make the decision to have somebody play him, since he's still alive. But these are the shots done by Laura, and quite good. I like all this stuff is quite good. So.
Yeah, I'm very upset. I never got to see this in theaters, like in 3D. I never got to see this in the 3D format. So
it was good, well done. Because all the footage we had, it was just done really well, and I got to meet. The great thing about this, I got to meet Don Walsh. On this, and I did quite a long interview with Don Walsh in Guam to catch up on all this, and we became good friends. And then now the making of this was done over, I think, 3 years. It took 3 years to build this up, and this was all on and on documented by. Someone else that they had a different DP. It was handled by Andrew, and so all this was whenever an event like this would happen, someone would go out and film it. But this was over a period of time that Jim was paying for this himself. So it was quite, and this is
wow.
Who was that? So this will bring up something. They had to pressure test each part of the sub over time.
Right.
And Ron Allen was the co-designer of this sub, but each part of the sub had to be pressure tested to full ocean depth, 16,500 pounds per square inch. And there's Andrew. So they would test parts of the exterior sub, and here's a really good animated explanation of how it worked. But each section had to be dropped, pressurized, to show that it could go the full ocean, and except the sub itself completed. There's no way to do it. And what you'll see later in the film, that they drop the sub with weights and a timer that would cut it loose to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. And there was a timer set with an explosive bolt to break the weights away in the chain that was holding it. And hopefully it would come back. That was the only way, and insisted on having a full ocean depth pressure test. And so that really happened. So anyway, let's see. So this is Melbourne, I think.
Right. What is the insurance policy on something like this?
Jim insured himself.
Oh
there was no insurance.
Oh my God.
No, everything was, yeah. This is a very interesting sequence. You'll see that the sub is, I have some, this is syntactic foam. I actually have some.
From Deep Sea Challenge?
Yeah. Yeah. Parts that, were, when they were like shipped, and I told them I wanted the sub. This dove to a specific depth. I don't know, but syntactic foam is glass beads compressed into this into shapes. You can form the shapes, and it was in the hull of the sub was made out of this, and it's the buoyancy. So with that, the one thing, and under pressure, it was built at 14 pounds per square inch, but when it goes down to 16,500 pounds per square inch, the whole sub that was 20, I think it was 20, I'm going to say 27 feet, I remember that you're seeing the green thing here, is squeezed together. It squeezes down. It may be 2 inches smaller at the bottom, which means it can't be connected. That steel sphere cannot be connected and like screwed or glued or anything to part of the hull, because it could break away. And it was strapped. You see those straps? It was strapped to it. So it was kind of floating. It wasn't 100% glued to it. So that was interesting. And then this is a 380-pound hatch. And once Jim was in there, it was bolted. There were 3 main big bolts. They had to bolt it shut. So he is bolted in. That's it. He's going down. He's coming up. But he has to be they had to unscrew the hatch to get him out. It's quite bizarre now that I'm talking about it. Then the weights, they had 1,600 pounds of weight, I think 1,100 or 1,600 pounds. Walt Conti designed and built the bottom of the sub back here in LA and shipped it out there. That weight, there's a circuit, electrical circuit that runs through the entire sub, and as a safety feature, there's magnets that held these little sort of levers, magnets stuck together, holding the weights in place. If they lost electrical power, the magnets would disengage, they would open, and the weights would drop away. So if you were there and you lost complete power, electrical switch that would drop your weights, it was automatically all the weights went. That was one thing. They don't explain, but they just show testing, which is really cool. Then now we're back into Jim's history. When we were driving to the airport with Susie and Jim, I asked Susie point blank. I said, Susie, have you guys discussed between yourselves what happens if there's an accident? And they both just point blank, no, we haven't discussed it. And I looked at her and I said, seriously, you haven't discussed it? No. he knows what he's doing. He explained how all this works. I trust him. I believe in him. And so no, it was never discussed. It's good. And I thought, well, I see why these two are together. um,
Just double checking. You're seeing. Okay, it was just
I see the
Titanic
kids
footage.
now.
It was just Titanic, though.
There was Titanic. Now I'm into Jim with
Right.
the kids.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
I may be a few seconds ahead of you.
That's fine.
And then there's the sequence that I shot at sea of Jim. There's a lot of it's interconnected, interspersed throughout. Shot it at sea, but they use it in and out of here. Him discussing, I don't know, that how he the interview I did just explains him as a person. It was quite good, and it's used. This him swimming with this ROV. This could be a number of places that we went over time. Jim could swim down to 100 feet, hold his breath. He would do that. He just said, "You're going to have to be able to." Now I have the abyss coming up here. Yeah, I did the abyss. I don't know if everybody knows that, but
Yeah, that's what that Oscar's behind you for, right?
What's that?
That's what that Oscar's behind you for.
Yes, that's the abyss.
That's the abyss. Yep.
And then, oh, by the way, this guy jumping off the ledge here in the abyss, that's Charlie Arneson. He was also a physical stunt guy. In the movie, he was quite a good diver. But he was holding his breath in that scene, by the way. And then everybody realized that because he went down 55 feet. And all these, as soon as he did that, and we knew we had a cut, there was like 5 safety divers dove down behind him. Anyway, this scene here is what I talked about. They have 45 minutes of Jim in his cabin. Really, really great interview. I wish they could use it and other things. But and this is the real Titanic that's coming up here with. Now you'll see a submarine at the bow of the Titanic. Right, I'm in this sub. This is Mirror 2 going across the chain, the deck. So I don't know how far out of sync I am with you.
I am. Let me try to give you a clear view here. Okay, so I am just now on Titanic.
Okay, so I'm a few seconds ahead of you, which is probably good.
I wonder if is there a different cut of this film? Because I thought we were pretty synced up at one point.
Oh, it depends on how this is running. I don't know. I have Mirror 1 coming up out of the water first. This is how the Russians recovered stuff. And Jim getting out of the sub. So, oh, I had a story about. You see the Titanic, and you see a dolphin at the front of that. That was when we were going through the movie. That's from the film Under Siege. I called a friend of mine who was the producer of that movie, and I said, "Can I buy that clip with the dolphin?" And so we bought that clip and put the Titanic over the Missouri and used that for the movie. So these little robotic ROVs were built by Jim Cameron's brother Mike. They worked really good, and they would spool out. We called them the spinnerets. All the electrical power and cabling was done on a little spools of wire that would. And after each dive, before we had to leave the scene, we had to go back during the filming. We had to go back into the Titanic, and use the manipulator arm to rewind all that wire. Now I'm in this shot. There's a table. I'm in the shot that everybody's looking at in this Titanic dive. But we had to clean up all that stuff. We had to pull it out. So, and then you'll see a picture of Ron Allen, and then Jim goes. Then there was the Bismarck expedition, where they went to the Bismarck and made some pretty good discoveries. And that was Bismarck was 16,000 feet, which was half the distance of where Jim was about to go. That was quite a good. I don't know if you saw that the documentary, diving the Bismarck. That's quite a good film. If people are watching this, they want to find something else to look at. So there's Ghost of the Abyss and Bismarck.
And Aliens of the Deep.
Aliens of the Deep. Oh, that one. Right. I was involved with that one. But I think they went back and discovered why the rudder could not be repaired in the Bismarck. Because it took some old, biplane, British biplane, World War II. It turned out that the Bismarck was so highly advanced electronics, they couldn't track. They were designed to move the guns faster than these planes were flying slower, and they would overshoot them. And one of those planes got through and torpedoed the rudder in the back of the ship, and that was the end of the Bismarck. That was the start of the end. Here's that thing where Jim says, "Am I an explorer? I'm a filmmaker." That's coming up. So then, once I remember being nervous when we were doing Avatar. Everybody was kind of nervous, like, hopefully this will make money. And it did make money. Yeah, and once that got going, because in between, by the way, in between these working on films, we'd go on I want to say dive vacations. We'd take a break, but it was just as hard a work as we all did serious diving when they did do that. And we'd go to, Papua New Guinea, we'd go to the Bahamas. We'd just do all the stuff that was constantly diving. Everything was built around diving. All vacations. I get a call like, we're going someplace. Do you want to go? You got time? But anyway, that's the way.
Do you do any of those in 2025?
I'm sorry?
Do you still do that in 2025, or is that a thing in the past?
Everybody, well, no, there was, when COVID hit, nobody went anywhere. Nobody's recycled or back. There's no one back into what we were doing before. They just to finish Avatar 2, The Way of Water. They had to get crews down there, private flights to get a crew to work on that film, and everybody was, since it was an island, everybody was quarantined. Yeah, it just changed the rhythm of everything.
Gotcha.
Let's see, what do we got? I'm looking at my notes to try to get into. when we get up into Rabaul. I got some fun notes on Rabaul, but
So is the footage I'm looking at right now and that you're looking at and everyone's looking at, is this you directing?
no, this is previous.
Okay.
This is in building the sub in Melbourne. This is that's what I'm doing. But this happened over time,
Right.
and all the original training was, again, it was 7 years of doing this. So there were different times they would film this. So they're always filming in 3D. This is getting everything ready.
Mhm.
So it jumps around because and that's there we go, January 23rd, 2012. leaving Sydney Harbor, and here's Don. I have Don Walsh showing up
Okay.
now.
But see, you've been in a very interesting position that you've directed a film. You've directed a feature film, Virus, and then you've also directed this, which is a documentary.
Yeah.
What's the difference between the two? Because they're both called directing, but what's the difference?
Well, one is a little more organized. You have a plan. You know what you're supposed to shoot for the day. You have people that are shooting a script. With a documentary, you don't know how it's going to turn out.
Right.
You have no idea. It could be good. It can be bad. And I remember telling Jim, when I do this, no matter what happens, I will film, an absolute a document that will show what happened. If it turns out negative, we're going to know why. It'll be a forensic file of what happened on your dive. Because basically, you could die.
Yeah.
And we'll find out why. Because they will get through this whole thing of there's, horrible ways to die. These things, the subs can implode at depth, because if the viewport or any of the penetrators, all the wires that are running the manipulator arms and the cameras that are outside the sub, they call these hull penetrators. If any of those fail, boom, it's over. You can run out of air. If they loses power and it doesn't ascend, you could be adrift, or you could freeze to death. You only have oxygen or air for 72 hours. All of that will be covered, and he was a good, I didn't know how he was feel about that, but it was good. I did this really great. I'm looking at the Trieste landing at depth. Now at depth, water, there's a big cloud of silt, doesn't move. It just sat there. They got to dump a lot, what they call these nickel cadmium beads, basically BBs. The X amount of pounds of these things. They had 400 pounds on the sub. I don't know how many pounds they had on the Trieste, but conceptually it was the same. They used the same type of technology. Things didn't change. These beads this bin of beads would take you down with weight. You'd dump that to slow your descent, or if you wanted to ascend, you dump everything. You get rid of all your weight. You're going to go to the surface. There was a bin on the Deep Sea Challenger, that a couple of 100 pounds of these nickel cadmium beads that he learned as he's ascending. It would slow as you lose weight, it becomes more buoyant. And he got so good at landing, he could get that thing and just touch the bottom. And I could look at the footage of how the silt at the bottom would swirl around. You can tell you were in a deep place because it would slowly move. It didn't scatter like it scatters if you dive here in the ocean in a shallower place. But yeah, some of this technology was passed along and reused. It works quite well. And that's there you go, January 2012. That's where the crew finished the sub. They're moving it. So what else? Where are we going next?
Yeah, I guess I'm just rewatching this and knowing what hearing everything you're talking about, and understanding that okay, James, he insured himself, but it's still mind blowing to me. He's not a nobody, right? He is a very prolific person. So I'm even surprised that he was even allowed to do it in the first place. Like, had something gone wrong,
It wasn't that. I mean, I don't know how deep I'm supposed to get into this, but Jim had to insure himself. I know that, and I don't think anybody would insure him.
Right. Yeah.
And there is all these guys that, if you're a Navy diver, like I guess the government insures you if you're part of a Navy team. Here's these bolts. These once you get in, you're in the sub. They screw these three large lag bolts. You're in. You're not getting out. And the reverse of these are the first tests here, the first test dives in the harbor, I think. There was a rescue plan, and they had this thing called a quasar on the dive ship, and this is all true. Nothing worked on these first dives, but anyway, they had the thing called a quasar with 6,000 feet of cable, and there was an ROV on it with a deep ocean vehicle, deep dive vehicle that had basically manipulator arms. That if there was a problem with the sub and that sub could surface within 6,000 feet, they'd grab it and they'd pull it up to like within 100-ish feet of the surface. And divers would go down and they'd release some of the bear bags and roll the sub over so that this hatch that weighed almost 400 pounds would open. It had to be upside down for it to open downward. And Jim would basically hold his breath. He'd have a little air bottle, and one of the divers would go in and help him get to the surface. We were going to do that, showing that. I think we had an animated sequence like that, and then he didn't want to put it in the movie because I think it would be more dangerous not telling you there was even a rehearsed plan. Anyway, here's Mike Degree, great guy. It's really, really sad to see this. And there's Joe McGinnis right there in the middle, old friend of Jim's, who was the documentary. He wrote the daily reports, and let's see. All right, it's going down. Oh, there was an interesting thing that happened when the thing was at the surface. There would be schools of fish that would get in and around the sub. I mean, lots of fish, hundreds of them. And when the thing descended, the fish would go with them. See these little fish? The fish would go with the sub. And when the sub resurfaced, you'd open up the side, the basket or the front of the sub, and there'd be all these dead fish. They had gone down full depth and were crushed, and were in the inner workings of the sub. But now where are we? We're about to go. Yeah, we would plan these daily. Every morning we'd get together at 8 o'clock, and you'd and then, oh my God, here's the terrible report of what happened before I got there. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of sad to see. They were refueling. Accident.
Mm.
So, yeah, and Jim explains all, what they went through in this. The thing to keep in mind that they really thought they were going to not do it, and then Jim came up. They all talked and thought Andrew wouldn't have wanted that.
Right.
So there was a discussion. I guess I became part of the discussion. What would they do? Yeah, this was actually interviews I did after. But
was there ever a sense of, after you came on board, was there ever a sense of, because of the tragedy that occurred with the helicopter, is like did you look at that as maybe that's a sign that we shouldn't do this? Was that ever a thought you had in your head?
No.
No.
No. It was Andrew's helicopter. That was the other thing. I think he was, and it was just an accident. A terrible accident. And accidents happen, but the mood of everybody when I got there was a bit off. Like I had to prove myself. It was a bit stiff in the beginning. I had to go out and I had my shot list, and I would come up with shots. And it was Jules O'Loughlin, the DP, who he, like I said, he became my new best friend, and we talked about how do we get this done. Let's just start getting footage of the sub and the launch and what's going on day to day, and then this. So the first shot, I'm looking at a graphic of going to New Britain Island and Jacquinot Bay and Papua New Guinea. My first shot is flying over the trees here. We're hanging out of the helicopter in Papua New Guinea. This is the very first shot I did in New Zealand. I don't know if that's up yet. And the ship in New Zealand. And we're starting every day was something different. Different launches. They would test the different depths. Dive 3 is at 3,000 feet. And anyway, we would find different locations. We had very, very detailed discussions of where we could set up a camera. Once a camera was set to show something, couldn't move until the sub was launched. And here we have and David Witherspoon was the other guy I had to trust. See, look at these cable. You'll see these things wherever you were. What Jules did was we decided he'd find places to put little cameras, stick them around where you couldn't go. That might be dangerous, but you wanted the angle. But there might be just a little, you had a foot or two you couldn't fit a camera there, but we would stick a camera on it. Then I was up on the crane deck. It's funny to see myself. I can look through this footage and freeze frame and see myself with the camera. But they explained pretty well here's we're getting the sub down into its launch position, which is coming up, and you have Jim. The number there was three cameras in with him, and there was a red. What was that camera? I'm going to say Red Epic. I might be wrong. Red Dragon, but there was a camera that would shoot out the portal, and Jim had a monitor that he could watch and see outside. Now the other cameras that are in the sub with him would document everything that was happening. You would also, again, here's this thing of, was this done in post? And the answer is no. And it just, when you're dropping down and you got a lot of stuff going on in your head, it helped him to discuss what was happening. It was also part of the dive log, and to keep him to keep him on track, of keep him focused. He'll just keep describing depths he's at, what he's doing, what he's seeing, and it'll be part of the dive log and part of the film. And there were 3D cameras. It was funny, little cameras, these little designed specifically to fit in the sub. I just wanted to say that this wasn't post, it was the real footage. Yeah, the first dive, I think the first dive was pretty successful. I'm trying to remember. I have the shot list from the editor. And
can you flash it? Can you flash it? Can you flash it up on the screen, the shot list, if you have it? I love seeing these artifacts.
Well, she wrote down, what everything that was happening in order.
Well, that said True Lies at 30.
What's that?
That said True Lies at 30.
This said that?
Yeah.
I grabbed the wrong one. Okay. Yeah, things with cameras.
Wow.
Anyway, now part of this, there's a lander. There was two things. There was the sub and the lander. We had a science platform. The lander was this thing that had a basket that it could put the chicken parts in it that would attract fish and then sea life at the bottom. And it had a camera to do that. And we'd also launch, and that would go to the bottom. And that would give about, an hour before any launch. And it was down for 24 hours. Science lab. And Jim could go, part of the training of learning this thing was then Jim would be launched, because he might be different location. It had a transponder on it. Jim would lock onto that transponder and drive to the lander. And the lander had lights, and it would light the area. And that would happen all the way to the deep dive, that he would launch a lander. The process was lander in the morning. He'd go later, locate the lander, and then with the lights from the lander, which are doing shots, doing shots of the submersible. And then there was the quasar would also be sent out, and it had 30 feet of cable, 30 feet of lead on another little ROV that would fly around. So there's a good shot coming up of the lander, Jim at the lander, and he had a six-foot boom arm that he could film on his sub, and we take the ROV from the quasar and fly that around. That would work to the 6,000 foot level. We could film interactively each other. Now this is interesting. What you're coming up is you have a sheer drop coming up. It's probably a few seconds away, where you see the Challenger floating over these giant chunks of rock. Well, that was 50 feet from where we landed. And that we all like commented like, wait a minute, what if we were 50 feet to the right when he landed? He would have hit in that big crack, the big, the danger involved. We just kept thinking, oh, they're just dropping, to hit the bottom on a big flat surface. Well, there was this big gash, piles of boulders, lava. There were chunks of lava. But anyway, he's servicing now. I guess that was we were successful dive. I'm just looking for some other. If I can find some stuff for you. All right, now. We came, so once we got to Papua New Guinea, we had a helicopter for a couple of days, and I had to film. We did some launch and recovery at different times of the day, and then once in Rabaul, we had to fly over this. This was an active volcano, and the ground here. This was the city of Rabaul. In 1994, that volcano went off and covered the entire place, the town of Rabaul, in 20 to 30 feet of ash. And so I had again gone out there, and I had found I saw some local natives playing golf. And I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Oh, well, the golf course is right here, so we're still playing golf." And so I told Jim, I said, "When we go out, I want to introduce you to, you can walk around and you can talk about this volcano." Well, when we went out, there was somebody blocking the road, said, "You can't come out here. This is my property. You can't drive on it." And this guy's name was Francis Kita. And Francis Kita, we were driving. He says, "This is my house. You're driving on it, and my mother's house is there, and we used to work in that place over there." And then Jim, sort of whispered to us like, "Bring the cameras out." So we went in the back, and we had these handheld 3D cameras. And Jim, he was winging this. He talked to Francis Kita. This is all made up on the spot. And he connected it. He was so good at this, connected the fact they're on a volcano and moving plates and active, plates. And these kids were pushing these poles with wheels on them. And I went over there. I said, "What are you guys doing? What are these?" He said, "They're cars." So those are they're playing. But anyway, this sequence was made up. And then I managed back in Sydney or Melbourne, we had everybody locate this footage. We found the guy who his car filmed the sequence that we're going to see. We're going to see the tsunami and inside this car that a guy was in who survived, but his footage he was floating around in this debris. And we used that, and this became completely made up sequence. This is why you make documentary films, slightly different than live action, where you don't know where you're going. But this came out, it's a really great scene. I like it. I was happy with it. And then we're back into the dive sequence. But this is dive 5, I think we're coming up on. And again, this was the other submersible off the quasar, and he's at the bottom. So Yeah, it was like and the whole time down there, all the footage we saw, I saw one. We found a cup, a tin cup, um, and these little and surprising little creatures that you wouldn't expect to be at depth. Remember, it's pitch black, and he finds this octopus that was kind of cool, but you never knew what you'd see. And while we're here, you have any questions? I mean, you looked at this.
Yeah, no, it's one. I'm just being taken away by watching this again. This is the first time I've seen it in a few years.
Yeah.
But no, like you brought up a good point of because I wanted to ask you, having like known Jim, he didn't do this to set a record or anything. Like that wasn't why he did
No.
this. He did this because he wanted to see what he would find at the bottom of the deepest part of the ocean. That's right. Like that's really
Yeah,
why
and
he did it.
we were hoping we'd come across, all this part of the world. There was, World War II, sunken ships or downed airplanes. Never came across any of that. We were hoping. Anyway, this is another part, and then we're leaving Papua New Guinea. Here we're heading out here to. And you look at these. Look at these. Some of these. There's naked kids here. They were really in these canoes. It really was a bizarre juxtaposition of technology and island people. Now we're coming up to the Binding tribe. I asked the chief when I got there. Let me get this straight. Are you guys you're headhunters, or are you cannibals? I mean, which are you? And I had a translator, and they looked at me and said, the chief looked at me and goes, "Oh, we no longer eat the long pig," which means these people used to be cannibals. And I said, when was that? When did you stop being cannibals? They said like 1980.
Oh, Jesus.
I said, what do you mean? I mean, and what made you stop being cannibals? And they said, they became Christian. And so how did that make you stop doing that? And he goes, well, we were taught that there's an afterlife. And I went, but I thought all peoples, all nations have some sort of theory about afterlife. He goes, no, nothing. We didn't have that. You were born, you died, and that was that. So I guess that's what you need. If you didn't think about it, that's how you could be a cannibal. I guess you could kill somebody because there was nothing after that anyway. You wouldn't be punished by God. Or it was very interesting.
Wow.
So now we're into the next dive coming up, which is, I don't have my list again. See if I can find it. No. Oh, it's funny when you see these divers, they line up perfectly. I had them notice when we all dive. I asked them, when the sub goes away, I want you to swim right over the top point where you were, so it looks like you could see them, because that was actually a planned shot each time they did that. So yeah, so I don't know if anybody's watching that. Remember, you're in this thing. There's no movement. There's no nothing. You're just in there for a while, and it's, even though it's dropping at 7 knots, 6, 7 knots, it's still a long, boring time. And you're in this can. By the way, the interior of the sphere, I think it's 44 inches, and Jim is basically, he's a 6-footer, so his knees are kind of, he's stuck in that position. He's doing all this stuff to, keep him busy. We had, it reminds me of how many cameras we had: 3 on the inside, 2 on the outside, different positions on the sub to get some of these shots, and we'd move them around. I think this is the dive that everything quit working, that's coming up here. Lost hydraulic pressure. It's not good. Dive.
Would you ever do this? Would you ever even remotely
I thought
consider
about
doing this?
it. But I mean, you see how he dealt with it. I'd like to think I could, but I don't know how worth it. Like he talks about how worth it this would be. I'd like to say yes, I would, but I'm like this a little bit shaky. I can go to the known parts that we know about, but at this point he hadn't gone full ocean depth. This is still, and you have to make sure everything works. When everything quit working, he didn't go full ocean depth, but he dropped weights. The weights left, and he came back. I think he does. His explanation is pretty good, and I don't think he was. By the way, the one thing that was what I gathered by this whole thing is he was. I'm surprised how consistent he was. He never got angry here, ever. Just realized, it's a stressful thing, and no one's ever done this, and he was really great about it. So anyway, I'm watching now that they're cooling down the batteries. The batteries were getting hot. Sitting on the deck, they had to hose them. They had to keep them cool. But all right. Yeah, and what he's saying here is really great. I mean, this is part of that interview that I really liked. So the New Britain Trench. This was a first time anybody, single, solo, or sub, period, had been to this depth. And I was mentioning earlier about when it touches down, with how you can tell where you are, and looking at all this footage of how the swirling silt, you can tell the pressure at depth, how it affects you, how it affects the surrounding the silt that's swirling. It how it interacts with the water. You can tell how deep you are. So yeah, we were hoping we'd find something spectacularly, human down there, like a wreckage. Never came across. They could have been 10 feet to the right. We don't know, and behind us.
Right.
But this was weird because we just assumed everything was flat below until we started looking at some of this footage, and how and this is real. Yeah, this stuff, these little guys on this slope. Remember, they live in absolute pitch darkness, pitch black. And at the end of the day, whenever we'd start the day off dropping a lander, and then at the end of the day or the day before, they'd cycle. There was timers. We knew when they were coming up. They had transponders. We could go to them, collect them. We had a couple of different, like Doug Bartlett was a microbiologist. We had another astrophysicist on board, who was there to talk about what life could be. His specialty was Europa, and what life would be at depth under the ocean ice of Europa. And Dr. Kevin Hand. He's also somebody we've been talking to, because I had this other project called Navigator, takes place on Europa. But anyway, this is we're finally I think we're leaving, coming up now to the ship leaving, and we're heading up to the Challenger Deep. We flew ahead to Guam to get all our stuff organized and our camera equipment organized while the ship came out there. And I did some interviews with Don Walsh, and really great, because he goes, he had been there. That's where they left with his submarine, the Trieste. And we had to figure out, we'd been delayed, so we had to figure out, the sea started getting rough. And this is one of these scenes where I went in, because somebody had asked me, what's it like to direct Jim Cameron? And I said, well, I had this idea, and I knocked on his door, and I said, Jim, I have this thought. We're now over the Challenger Deep. Can you come out and talk about it? And he goes, well, I'm worried about the sub. You're the director. If you tell me what you want me to do, and I'll do it. And I said, I want you to come out on deck and talk about this is the thing you spent your life, you dreamed about, which he did. And he gave this nice talk. Now what's coming up here with the sub, you see the sub swinging around. This is that thing I mentioned earlier, where we had to do a full ocean depth test, pressure test of the sub with no one in it. And this was, they dropped the sub, they let it go, and it came back. And then it was, by the time it came back, we were in a rough sea. And this is pretty hairy, trying to recover the sub in a rough sea. Yeah, we had to do one full, what they did is they dropped the sub. There was 125 feet of chain with I don't know how many pounds of weight at the bottom, that it would descend, hit the bottom, and that would cushion its stop. And then after, a timer would release and send the sub back. And Jim said, well, it's either coming back or it's not. Luckily it did. So now we spend some time, the real dive is coming up. Showing up, we got a call from, it was pretty funny, from Paul Allen, Microsoft, one of the guys from Microsoft. He had this giant 450-foot, I call it a yacht, but it's a ship called the Octopus. He was going to meet us there. He had a helicopter. So they had helicopters on that ship. They could shoot aerials of the dive. And they had whatever additional stuff we needed. He was bringing with him the Edmund Hillary flag from the Explorers Club, which had been to the top of Mount Everest. We went out in a Zodiac, picked that flag up, and brought that back to the sub. And Jim put the Edmund Hillary flag in the sub, so it was going to go to the also the lowest, deepest part of the ocean. And when we got back, I think he opens it up, but and then that flag was retired. That can never be used again. So this is the big thing. We had to leave in the morning, which was never planned. We had to leave at night. But it did, the plus of that was when the subsurface, it would be in daylight. Never planned it that way, but it worked out pretty well. So now this thing with Susie, there was Glenn Singleman, who was the ship's doctor and also doing second unit with another camera. Susie, he didn't know if he wanted if Susie was going to be part of the movie, and I thought to myself, I went, wait a minute, she's got to be part of the movie. And I told Glenn to just follow Susie. Wherever Susie went, I want you to follow her and get her reaction. When Jim goes over the side, you follow her. Don't ever. And Jim said, well, that wasn't later. He said, well, that wasn't planned. I went, I know, but I took a shot. And he goes, good shot. It was good. It's a good thing you did that. Because he used every frame that we had of Susie, her reaction to all this, which I thought was a good character piece for this film, for Jim. And Jim, well, both of them together, I mean, they were a team. So so this is the real dive.
Your heart had to have been like in your throat.
Well, I was up. I filmed from the crane. There we go. There's a Susie shot. She was nervous. She pretended she wasn't. And I'm up on the right there with a camera, and so is Susie for the launch. And this is the actual dive.
I forget if at the end it says where it ended up, but where did this end up after it came back? Where is it now?
The submarine?
Yeah.
Oh, Woods Hole. It went to Woods Hole in Massachusetts. And they kind of used different parts of the sub for different other subs. They studied it, how this thing was made, built, put together.
Wow.
But it was a year later after it was done. Yeah, it was shipped off to Woods Hole. Yeah, and this little beat was I want to say a happy accident for drama. We're coming up to, there's a ballast lift bag that you need to steady the sub on the way to the surface. It's not 100% necessary. It's just helps stabilize the ride. And the hatch comes off, and that ballast bag pops out, which it wasn't supposed to. So Jim cutting it away, I knew he would do that. We just kept filming. You didn't need it to survive. You needed to make your ride better, but not survive totally. Yeah, this was all true. It just was happening. We were filming it as it happened. We didn't know if he would come back, by the way. Nobody knew, because every other dive, everything went wrong. And we took all these dives, including till the last dive. And there was a couple of ships. There was the Paul Allen ship was there. The submarine. They had 2 helicopters, but They really didn't want to fly at night, but they were there in the morning. They would help locate the sub when it came up. We had a wide area, and in fact, Paul Allen was in that helicopter flying around with his crew. He was in the when the sub returns to find it, because it came up. We had to go to it. It went pretty far away. Jim was driving around down there at the bottom. He moved about a quarter mile or so. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of the game here. I don't want you to give the audience too much information before it happens.
Well, I'd like to think that if they're watching this, they've seen the film. This would be a weird way to watch the movie for the first time.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
So, spoilers. They're
Yeah.
okay. They're okay. He lives. He lives, everybody.
Does. Yeah.
He lives. Jim Cameron is alive.
Yeah.
He just turned 70 not that long ago.
Oh, I guess he did. Yeah. That's a story. I went to his birthday party.
Yeah, and then you came on the next day.
What's that?
And then you came on this podcast the next day.
I did?
Yeah.
The first time?
Yeah, the first time you were on the podcast, you were like, yeah, it was his birthday last night.
Yeah. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I ended up doing some work on Avatar, Fire and Ash after the birthday party. He said, "Why don't you come on? I want you to do something, a sequence for me, if you're available." I went, "I'm available." So I did do some work on the third movie.
Super pumped.
Which I will not discuss.
Oh, no, of course not.
Other than that.
Super excited for it, though.
So this is where they talked about, now there's two types of sub. When they did the sub's 27 feet long. Well, 25 or 26 feet of it is this type of syntactic foam. And then there's a different batch of foam that was different beads, glass beads, and it was glued on there. So that extra 2 or 3 feet was attached by glue, an adhesive. One of the worries was that, and that part of the sub, there was a transponder. That's where the transponder was, at the top of the sub. If for any reason that separated and broke off, there'd be no way, there wasn't enough buoyancy to return to the surface, the full ocean surface. And that's what, one of those, so what could happen was he could come up and be 500 feet or 1,000 feet or a couple hundred feet from the surface, no transponder, you couldn't find him, and he'd drift away. That was one of the other big, there's all this stuff that everybody kept talking about. We didn't put that in the film. I had storyboarded a whole sequence of that happening. Just because it was interesting, but it was like, boy, I don't want this to happen. This is horrible. You'd freeze, you'd run out of oxygen, and you'd end up on a reef somewhere a couple of years later. That the thing would wash ashore somewhere, and then that would not be a good thing.
No. So
this is the touchdown at 36,000. What is it? 36,000. Excuse me, 35,787 feet on March 26, 2012. And it's really nice because you can see on his face, that's not, there's a slight smile on his face because he did it, and that's totally real. It's kind of nice. Thought it was a good moment. And you think about that. So yeah, and then we got Susie's reaction to it, his reaction. So
Yeah, and of course you don't want anything bad to happen. Not only is he like the main character of your documentary, he's your friend.
yeah,
like, you know what I mean? He's not some
yeah,
guy you met the other day.
yeah, right. And yeah,
That's amazing. I mean, this just
yeah.
like
And after this, I went in. We went in. I went into his cabin and just, I said, we never talk about shit like this, but this is fucking fantastic that you did this.
of course.
And he like, oh, went, no, Jim, I'm fucking blown away. Yeah, I had something written here that, this 45-minute interview I did with him, and he's going to talk about the end of the movie, but I did with him was I wish we could box it up and attach it to something else, because it just brings out his character and his character and career as a director, father, diver, and person, just what a great person he is, into focus. There are bits of the interview. Overall, it was a good experience for all of us when we did this, of doing the movie. And Deep Sea Challenge becomes a film about character of the individuals and the people who pull this off. I mean, nobody'd done this before. Nobody knew. It was a private group. It wasn't a government that put this all together. It was Jim's insane, insatiable drive. It's his money. I asked him about his kids, what he felt about that, and he said he wanted to set an example for his kids. He has 5 kids. Anyway, then he went on to finish Avatar 2, Way of Water, and I guess we have then Avatar 3, quite a good film also. That'll be coming out in December 16th, theoretically, if everything goes well.
Yeah, see, because that's what I'm also confused about is like it's not like he was a retired filmmaker, like he wasn't doing something actively. Like had something gone wrong and had he not made it, like what do they do with Avatar 2? Like, do they just find a new director? Like, you know what I mean?
Well, the films are basically, he shot 3, 4. He's 3, 4, and the 5 live action. So, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be the same, and so studios were not really happy, I would have to say.
I bet.
But this is all, his coda, his postscript here is trying to make things, inspire other people to do something like this.
That was a beautiful shot, by the way. Was that your decision to do that?
The wide shot?
No, the him looking out the hole and then like kind of fading into when he was a kid looking out the hole again.
No, that was hopefully that was Ray Quint. That was a good shot. Yeah.
That was that was really cool. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
everything in this movie is great, but that
Well,
was really neat.
well, part of it, it's like Jim said, I went down there. I couldn't not. There's a camera on a bayonet mount, on a mount, a red camera looking out the portal. It's like he's been looking at a screen the whole time. He said, I can't come down here all the way and not look out. And it and took the camera off and stuck his face in the window. And there's a 6-foot boom arm. He swung the camera at the end of that boom arm shot back into the sub. Part of now this is from the Octopus. The helicopter was from that ship, the Paul Allen ship. They were out there looking for, like, where is he? Now, once he surfaced, I had drawn this shot about, you want to be there looking at the ship where he pops up in front of you. We had to do that on a Zodiac. That was shot by Jules O'Loughlin, like this shot coming up. How did they get that? Because it's yeah. So there's the Octopus. That's a 450-foot ship owned by Paul Allen of Microsoft, who passed. I think he passed away last year. Oh. But he came all the way from Fiji to be there for that.
Yeah, this had to have looked great in 3D. Damn, I'm really upset I never got to see
it. It was quite good in 3D, yeah. And all the other elements that had been, and the animals had been shot in 3D also. Everything was 3D. Yeah, because somebody said, well, how did you get that? How could you get a helicopter shot in the middle of the ocean? I went, it was from Paul Allen's, it was his helicopter crew, their cameras. That's all this. That's for real. Mm-hmm. Now, see that hatch? They have to lift it with a crane. How do you get it? How would you do that underwater? This is real. So there was a cool thing. All these boats that showed up, they did try to show up for this. They all, there's that helicopter. There's, they all blew their horns, ship's horns. It's kind of cool. Like, like, yay, you did it. And there, Don Walsh, he said, did you find my shot? Like the shot that they dropped for his dive. But we were in a different part of the trench. He also said, did you find my fish? He also said he saw a fish down there in 1960. But anyway, if you're seeing this for the first time, it's pretty spectacular. Seeing it for second time, it's still damn good. It's a good movie. And a movie about character.
Yeah.
And about my friend Jim Cameron, who had lots of it. Still has lots of it.
Wow. And
I want to show you something that Don gave me.
Yeah, go ahead.
When I did my first dive on the Titanic, there's something called the twin dolphin pin. When you dive in a submarine below 1,000 feet or deeper, they pin this to your chest. They put it here and they pound it. It's like a submariner a-hole thing that they do. And but it's macho Navy stuff. Well, Don, once I got accepted to the because of this dive, accepted to the Explorers Club, Don Walsh is the only one in charge of these, which is the gold twin dolphin. He sent me this personally. He gave me this one. So I have two.
Wow.
This is cool. So anyway, what do we say in closing?
Well, look, I mean, it's correct me if I'm wrong, this is the last film that you've directed since, right? This is like the last thing on your credit so far? Or have you done something since directing?
Yeah, but we have now one that's come up. I did back here is a book.
Yeah, Navigator.
Yep. Like today, hopefully everybody can look at this. Paul Anderson has agreed to direct Navigator, and we're going to start working on. We're going to do some tweaks to the script starting next week. And hopefully, it'll be out in 2 years from now. You'll see a Navigator film.
Insane. Insane. So, but are you going to direct some of that? Like, I know you said he's signed on.
I don't know. We're in the middle. We're just starting. Like, what are we going to do?
Wow.
I would love it to get done. And then I have another animated film. It's a kid's story that called Scouse the Mouse. It's something with Ringo Starr that we're doing two kids books. That's in the works.
Okay.
So, so what I thought was a slow year sort of picked up all at once.
Yeah.
Both through Dark Horse.
Okay.
So.
And then, of course, your contribution to Fire and Ash. That'll be a big
Yeah,
credit.
I can't tell you what I did, but it's kind of fun. I get to see it in a week or two, a rough cut of it, or the latest cut.
All right. Well, you best believe when the film's out officially, I'll definitely be asking you what the hell you did on it.
Okay.
So, but no, in closing, when you watch this, and you've watched it a few times in prep for this, but watching it, what's the takeaway for you?
Just how I don't think anybody realizes that how this was put together. I mean, it's personal funds that Jim wanted to do this. He always talked. We did a lot of diving after, like the process of like the Abyss. This is the Abyss for real, not done with a government submarine. Like what's down there at the bottom? Well, I'm sorry there wasn't an alien spaceship down there, but and I hear people saying, oh, well, if you know nothing about diving and you watch this but there was no really like big, strange creature down there, like the Meg. I went, well, because the Meg's is a fantasy and an impossible concept. But it's just wonderful to know that all these people got together. They'd never done anything like this. All these electricians and designers and those science guys, they were just good at their little specific task, and they all got together and were organized by Andrew in the beginning. All this stuff got put together. Most of them were Australian, and especially the big push by these people that got this done. It was just it was a surprise, because there was all these things that didn't go well in the beginning. It got all honed. It's like any film. By the time you do the last shot, you know how to do it, and you're not doing it again. Yeah, the sub was donated and it went to Woods Hole, and I don't know. It's probably in pieces now. It's certainly not on display anywhere. It did do a tour, but all the internals were taken out.
Gotcha.
So, and I don't know that Jim's going to do this again. So I have no inside information on that. I don't know.
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, he does have plans to do Titanic again, like go to Titanic again?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
Oh,
That
okay.
you see an announcement?
During I think the coverage of the Titan implosion, I think it was mentioned that he had plans to.
Oh, that mess, that disaster. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. It would be with the Russian subs. Yeah, because that's a proven systems. The Russians.
Right.
So yeah, they're good to 30,000 feet. They couldn't go to this depth, but they have a built-in safety thing of you're only, if it's good to 30,000 feet, you're only cleared cleared to go to 20. You have to have a third cushion. You have a gap in there that's covers your sort of safety thing that's built in. So, well, I want to thank you for doing this. I mean, I'm.
Thank me. Thank you.
No, yeah, no, it's like this film came out in theaters. It was quite. I even gave a talk at Apple at the time, and so it's just good to see. I mean, this was well done. This was nicely done.
Yeah. Came out in 2014, I believe, officially in 2014.
Yeah.
So just past the 10-year mark. So, but no, you don't have to thank me. Thank you seriously for putting aside 2 hours of your time and
Not a problem.
really going in depth on this, because I know a lot of people, that love Cameron's films and love what he does, want to hear these kinds of stories. So this is and that's really why I was quiet. I was just like, I want you to do what you didn't have the chance to do for the DVD, which was an audio commentary. So
yeah. Well, and then I got a little thing in for Andrew White and Mike. Yeah, that was terrible. That was such a terrible thing. And but
well, it was
anyway. I think the film came out really, really good. I wish the 2-hour version remained, because that had a little more detail about other things. Again, I had 1,200 hours of footage that we shot over the 2 months. They were out at sea and offshore. But there's a lot of other things that we saw down there that not creatures, but just things, and just getting it prepped. In the middle of this, once it was shot, Jim went off to. Did he go to? I don't know if he went to a premiere in England of. There was a 3D version of Titanic that came out. They were working on. Had been working on, and all of that stuff was. Or he went. I forget what he had to fly up to premiere. Maybe it was. I just don't remember. It's all blur now. But Paul Allen, he went on that ship. He went on the Octopus, and they drove him they drove it to Japan, or drove it north to Guam. He got on a plane and went to a premiere. was pretty crazy. So,
All right. Well,
again, thanks for setting this up. I appreciate it.
of course, I appreciate you coming back on. Stick around. We'll do a formal goodbye. I'm gonna end the
Okay.
recording here. So
Okay.
everybody, thank you. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. And like I say at the end of every episode, even though you just watched a Cameron film, even though he didn't direct it, still a Cameron film. Go watch another Cameron film.
Yeah.
Boom.